Hello, my name is Aaron Cavanagh and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Post-Burnout.com. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. This is our website's podcast where we publish full-length recordings of our interviews, which are sometimes the unedited versions of our site's articles and at other times are exclusives. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for checking us out. We hope you enjoy and consider subscribing, giving the episodes a thumbs up if you're on YouTube, or giving it a rating if you're anywhere else. It really helps us out. Thank you. Alright, in this edition of PostBurnout.com interviews, we speak with former Irish X Factor contestant and musician Janet Devlin. Janet discusses her new record, Emotional Rodeo, her desire to go country, how working on her self-esteem issues freed her up to create this album, ditching the major label route to go independent, how her self-described chronically online personality benefited her as an independent artist in the digital world, her time on the X Factor, country music's popularity in Ireland, the music industry, and much more.
Oh,
Hey Jen, how's it going?
all good. How are you doing?
It's very nice to meet you. It's yeah, I'm doing well. I'll try not to take up too much of your time. I know, yeah, you're very busy at the moment with the new album coming out. I just want to talk actually a little bit about kind of your background. I mean, I would have like first known you. I think like most people have like from the X Factor, but I mean, you had like quite rich upbringing in music. I mean, a very versatile kind of range. I mean, my understanding is that like as a musician, were somewhat self-taught, but also somewhat influenced by your parents. In general, I mean, how do you kind of find that you kind of like found your own kind of like idiosyncratic kind of approach to music? Because I think like your music is very versatile. Like when a new Janet Devlin song comes out, you don't really know what it's going to be necessarily. But like,
Yeah, I think I just there's always this music in our family, like from, before me. Like I think my great grandfather, from the stories I've heard, had the same like little lilt in his voice that I do. Apparently it just runs in family. So that's where I get that from. My brother actually, who is the second oldest, it's always funny in our house because somebody in an interview went, "Oh, the best country singer in Ireland," and I was like, "I'm not even the best country singer in my house." I've got a brother who's got like a big, deep Garth Brooksy style voice. But I've been singing according to my mum before I could speak. Just mouth it along to the songs and not the words and things, and then I think by about six or so, I was in a Ceilidh band playing, learning the whistle, and then by 8 years old, I was doing the fiddle as well. Um, and I was always singing, but like I didn't really have any self-belief really. But I just did it, and according to my nan as well, I was writing songs from about five, where she'd pick me up from school or whatever, and she'd be like, "Oh, that's a nice wee song. Like, who sings that?" And I just was like, "Oh, I wrote it in my head today."
yeah.
It's always been there. And then I think a changing moment musically definitely was my dad absolutely loved the movie Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
The Converse,
And
yeah.
yeah, and we watched it a bunch. Like I don't know why I've seen that movie so many times, but I have. And then it ended up that we would get the CD, or we'd burn the CD, and we had a big jukebox. And I think we ended up having to burn that soundtrack at least like five or six times. Whether it was the jukebox or us playing it so much, I don't know. But so that was kind of like the intro into like bluegrass.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's fully known, but like country music is the biggest genre in Ireland. It's
Yeah.
in everybody's homes, and it was the genre that everybody in our house could agree on. So country music was just there. It always has been there. And I'm from a very rural county. Like we're known as Farmers County, which is County Tyrone,
Yeah. Yeah.
which obviously naturally you gravitate to country music because where else are you going to get songs about combine harvesters and international harvesters and stuff? So that was definitely a big thing. And where I'm from as well, farmers still meet their wives at dances.
No, nice.
And instead of the old Irish jigs and reels, it's country music now. So it's very just bred into you. But then I had my babysitters, like my really cool older cousins, and one of them was obsessed with dance music. So like I grew up listening to Moby and Mojo, and just like the everything dance. Fatboy Slim was massive. All of that influence. And then my other cousin really liked rock music. So I grew up listening to like, Foo Fighters, Chili Peppers, Nirvana.
Yeah.
One of my brothers loved rap music, so that was a big thing. And country music was my other brother who used to print me CDs for going horse ride. I would show jump, like competitively show jump as a
Yeah.
kid, and we'd do these long drives to the competitions, and he'd burn us country music for me and my dad's. That was like I'll Catch Him, Garth Brooks, all of that,
Yeah.
the classics. And then I, as a teenager, loved like emo, emo rock. Loved it, loved every bit of it. Um, and I've just grown up around so many different types. And
Yeah.
I guess with this album, what was so great was like the beauty of country is such a huge genre. As far as
Yeah.
like you've got like heavy, heavy rock country,
Yeah.
you got swamp rock country, and you got like bluegrassy style country, and then you got Americana, and you've got just dad rock kind of like there's so many different types and even honky tonk and things. And the plus side about doing this record was that there's no rules for me, and I just got to take little bits from all my favorite types of country and chuck them onto this one record.
Yeah.
And it's been, it is a bit, even the album itself is unpredictable. It's not just like the every song I release, but it is just the whole album is like what type of country we're going to get next.
Yeah. No, and it's really like you mentioned like the kind of variety on the record, and I do think that's very apparent. Obviously like the title track, for example, when I was listening to it, really stood out to me as like really kind of like raucous and kind of I don't know, really like attention grabbing and demanding. I was wondering like you were kind of mentioning kind of this is something you've talked about before, but like issues growing up with self-esteem and
Mhm.
it seems like I don't know. I don't want to, assume anything, but it seems like, you've overcome a lot of those kind of insecurities. Do you find like now it was just kind of the right time to try and bring that stuff back that you loved as a child, or what was kind of impetus, I guess, for kind of going like, okay, I'm going to do like a country record because, again, I think like you just have that variety that like, listeners your fans will kind of go along with it.
Yeah, I think for me, whenever it was over 10 years ago now, where it was like, oh, I actually might be able to do this as a job now,
Yeah.
post TV and all this kind of stuff. I was like, oh, like I'm making songs now. I'm making music now. I was like, do you know what? Before I'm 30, I want to do country. In my head, it was supposed to be like 25. I was like, at 25, I'm going country. But then my last album took longer than it should have. And then lockdown postponed the album. And then just, sure, there was no talk, obviously, about going to Nashville at that point. But I did release my first country song in 2021. And I've been talking about going country for years. And the joke literally was like I would like tell my manager, God bless him, because I've like I'm gonna go, I'm at some point I'm gonna make this country record. And he's like, right, well, that'll be a natural time for us to part ways because I don't like country music.
Okay.
He's changed his tune now. He loves this album. So, we've won him over. And there'd be times where I would tell followers or even people I was like working with professionally, like, oh no, I'm gonna, end up on country or whatever. It's like, oh, country, really? And I'm just like, shut up, I love it. I think it's
Yeah.
class. Like, so it's just funny now that it's like popular.
Hmm.
And then I'm getting accused of bandwagoning, and I'm like, I've been making this album for like 5 years, lads. Leave me alone. All right, this is not on purpose. I'm not a major label. I can't go into a studio, whip up a country album in a week, and get it out there to be on trend. Like, no.
You can't do Beyonce.
Well, do you know what? It's like Beyonce. As much as people were giving her loads of slack, I was like, here, are you literally going to look at a woman? You're going to stare her in the eye, a woman who's born in Texas, and tell her that
No.
she doesn't know what country music is? Get in the sea. It might not be what your ideal country is, and that's fine, but that woman is from Texas. Like,
Yeah.
leave her alone.
Well, you kind of associate country music, obviously, with kind of like the southern states of the US. You find that like country music now, with kind of its global popularity, is kind of are you getting kind of idiosyncratic kind of pockets of country music expanding what country music can be? Because I think essentially country music is a very distinctive sound, but really I think the heart of it is storytelling. I think a lot of
Mm.
the focus is on um just telling folk tales, basically, just telling stories. I mean, it seems very in line with, Irish trad music and things like that, where it's just kind of about either telling personal stories or
Old
telling, I
timey
guess, like,
stories.
yeah, or even just say just fabrications.
Yeah. Well, it's always that thing as well, like the Irish um like immigrated to America, and when they went to like the Appalachians and stuff, like they brought all their instruments with them, and that was kind of like part of the beginnings of country music,
Mm,
predominantly like, the fiddle and all that. Like, it's interesting for me knowing Irish singing. The style of singing has been around since the dawn of Ireland.
mhm.
And there's those quick little lilts that you hear. And I'll hear a country singer. So, good example is like Chris Stapleton. First time I ever heard him. Actually, I was a massive fan of the Steel Drivers before I even knew him as a solo artist, which was hilarious. But him as a solo artist, I remember hearing his voice going, that's some Sean Noss right there. That's some Irish. That is the da, da, da. So I looked up. I was like, what is his heritage? And bloody hell, Northern Ireland, the same as myself. But I was like, there you go. I was like, you can hear it in some of the singers that
Yeah.
it's like you definitely have a bit of the Celt in you, and it shows. But yeah, it makes sense. Like Irish people were obviously known for like telling yarns, telling stories, and everybody has to have a party piece. You have
Yeah.
to be able to sing, dance, play an instrument, something. So it very much is in our bones, and I always knew obviously that in the States, especially in the southern states, that there is a big that's where country music, is born or whatever. But in Ireland, it's been as integral of the music scene as it has been out there. So it feels like a little partnership between the two, even though we do get forgot about. Like,
Yeah, no, I definitely see like the real rise of it. I mean, like there's just like I don't think people perhaps who aren't from Ireland really know, but like there's just like massive like country festivals over here like all the time. Like country artists are like playing like really big venues, and it's just
mhm.
it's really exploded. It's kind of interested actually in your career kind of post X Factor, because obviously with that competition, it was, it's sort of the expectation of playing the popular music of the day.
Mm.
But then, like, after that, you kind of went the independent route. You didn't really go with the major label route. Was that a conscious decision to have, I guess, autonomy over the music you were doing, or was that just kind of the opportunities that were available? How much of that was kind of like a conscious decision to kind of go, no, I'm going to go the independent route?
It was fully conscious, because I left the show. I got offered a few big deals, and I remember being told about one of them in particular, and it was pretty much like, this is great money. And it was great money. But as a kid, you don't have a concept of money anyway.
Yeah.
But two, I oddly enough had a weird, just always like possession over like protecting my identity. And for me, when I looked at the deal and stuff, it was like pretty much, oh, you're going to get an album essentially written for you and given to you, and you just sing it, and it goes out ASAP to like bank on the market that's there.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, that's not fair. I was like, I want to make an album of my own songs, because I've all people know me for singing other people's music. And sure, do you know what? Like, if I go to write and record an album and it sucks, but I shouldn't be in the bloody industry anyway. I should just be doing covers. And and at the time, I remember being like, I'll happily go on a cruise ship and just sing cover songs till dusk till
Yeah.
dawn. I've never had pride about it in that way, but I was like, I want to live and die by my own sword a bit, and I wanted to write my own album. And then that meant that the 3 or whatever deals that came in, I was like, nah,
Yeah.
it's just stupid for me to do that. Um, and then at the time there was whisperings of like crowd funding. It was totally brand new concept, and I was like, well, that makes sense. Like, there's people chasing me down for an album, and they clearly want to hear an album, so like, let's do that. And I'd already started writing. Pretty much as soon as I left the show, I was straight into studios writing of my own volition, because the team I had at the time were just trying to get me to do as many gigs as I could, and I did. Like, I didn't care what it was. The opening of an envelope, I would have been there, because I was like, that's money that might not be there tomorrow. You better go.
Sure.
And I took all the money that I was making and I was reinvesting into this album and things. And then the first album iteration, I ended up having to bin because it was god awful and I didn't want to release it.
Yep.
But I was still doing the crowdfunding thing. And then in 6 weeks, I made my first record and released it. And it did what it did. It was like number one in the indie breakers and stuff like that. So it wasn't too bad. But it was definitely my putting my fork in the ground and going, no, if I can't write, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And that is fine. Like
Yeah.
it's okay not to be good at it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but now then that kind of started that whole thing of like, all right, one, I'll do a country album in the future because I want to retire in the country. But until then, I want to play around with sounds. I want to play around with whatever I want to do, writing wise and things like that, and just enjoy, the freedom of your youth to go and make some mistakes and play around with it all. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because I actually think you and I are of a similar age, and kind of like one thing now with the kind of streaming platforms is that I think we're seeing somewhat of a decline in genre. I think people have a very kind of like mixed taste. Like no one's really genre inclined anymore.
Mm-mm.
And it's making kind of I think it's making art a lot more interesting. I think it's making people more versatile. Do you think people are now perhaps even say a decade ago, do you think people are more receptive to artists trying new things? Do you think people are willing to go along for the ride as long as the songs are good?
I definitely think, I suppose, like just the average music listener, I feel like their musical palette is much more expanded from, I don't know, just the internet, the exposure to all different types of music. And
Yeah.
I think a death of that notion that your genre is your personality thing. It's like if you listen to metal music, you must look like you listen to metal music, dress
Yeah.
like you listen, the whole works. Um, that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
One minute like you could have somebody listening to Chapel Rowan, and the next minute they're listening to While She Sleeps.
Yes.
It doesn't matter, and I love it. And I think, country is only one example of how far ranging a genre is now. I feel like if you look into any genre, there's a massive expansion of a whole world of different types. And I think that's a great place to be. And I like that with the dawn of the internet and music streaming and things, people aren't reliant on the heads of playlists at radio stations and stuff to feed them good music. They're like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
I'm going to go find good music. And I think
Yeah.
that that's a dope place to be.
Yeah, it's not like even like the financial sacrifice of kind of just taking a risk on a record. I think that's what creates that kind of thing where it's like, well, I'm just gonna like kind of get the artists I already know. It's funny you were kind of mentioning listening to emo music as a teen, and like I remember kind of being around like in the kind of like scene. It was like, people would kind of give you shit if you were like wearing a black hoodie or if your hair was colored or anything like
Dude,
that.
you talk about growing up in small town Ireland. I got rinsed for wearing Converse.
Yes, I did too. I did too.
Bro,
And
what?
when I brought it to school for tracksuit day, they were like,
Yeah.
"You're wearing Converse?"
Got that, and then I would like skinny jeans before the skinny
Yeah,
jean thing. I remember getting bullied for at least 4 years because they hadn't come into circulation just yet.
yeah,
And it was just like, Jesus, God forbid you want to be different. And you know what? I was my friend films for me sometimes, and she was talking about, Jesus, if you wear a hat back home, even to this day, if you wear a hat and you don't normally wear a hat,
yeah. Everyone's
everybody's
gonna
talking
comment
about
on
that hat. I was
that.
like, oh my God. Because I forget, living in the cities and stuff, like
Yeah.
you get to do whatever you want to do because it's so anonymous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really interesting how kind of we're in other people's lives, I guess, over here a little bit.
Just
Other
a
people's
touch,
business. Yeah.
you know.
So do you feel like we're talking about like your kind of like musical taste, like how varied they were and how people's musical tastes are varied, and of course the skinny jeans. Do you feel you're kind of a trailblazer and everyone's just kind of catching you up to Janet Devlin?
No, it's never like that. It's
I'm not
just
joking,
like,
by the way.
I know everything's cyclical, isn't it?
Yeah.
So even country music, like, because people keep going, is country music finally cool? I'm like, one, if it wasn't cool, you were in the wrong place. Because like you go to like you go to Louisiana,
Hmm.
and it is cool. It's just
You
like,
can curse, by the way.
sorry, I'm trying to be good. But like just
I saw
little,
you kind of like repressing there, like, no, you
yeah,
can talk freely.
it's I've there's been a few times where I've been ahead of the curve and I get absolutely rinsed for it all the time.
Yeah.
I remember people not taking me seriously in the music industry because I was making online content. I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
I'm
crazy.
making YouTube videos, and they're like, well, what does you want to be? Does you want to be a videographer? Does you want to be a singer?
Yeah. Yeah, because like I remember like, back then like YouTube really didn't have a kind of pipeline from, creating stuff to actually monetizing it really at the time. I think there was probably
Literally,
a handful of creators, but
I was
again,
making videos on YouTube well before monetization. Like,
yes.
I started on YouTube even before TV. Um, and even before we made videos, like my account has been there since 2006.
Yeah.
And I used to
Really early adopter.
yeah, I'm ancient on the internet. Like, I used to upload videos of me riding my horse and competing on my horse and all that kind of stuff. Like, I've been chronically online, I'd say, since about 10 years old, from like the dawn of RuneScape, Um, awful. Like, I was a teenager who used to bloody spend time on 4chan. It's like, Janet,
Oh
I'm
no.
glad that that time ended. Obviously, it's just morbid
You gotta go
curiosity.
through
But like,
it.
it's always just really funny to me that there's a few things that I always get picked on for.
Mm,
And then it's like fast forward a few years and it's like that's just the given thing in the way of doing it and stuff. And I'm
yeah.
like, okay, cool.
It's like you'll get it eventually. I think that's like a great scoop that you were a 4chan lurker.
Don't even like, it's just
That's
there's
what I'm
so
running
much
with, by the way.
lower. Like, she's on 4chan and playing fucking RuneScape. And you know what? I used to have, until recently, I had my like my wee Mac computer,
Yeah.
laptop. You'd open it up, and it was all the icons for things were little runes.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
I had the little the gnome as my backdrop, everything, just
yeah.
full on nerding it out. But like, I think for me, like, I've always loved internet. I've like
Mm,
enjoyed watching and digesting and making. And whenever I got off the show, and whenever I just started making music again, I was like, oh, I want to sing a version of I See Fire by Ed Sheeran. Like,
yeah,
I should just, and then my team being like, oh, we'll record that, we'll put it up. And then that started the dawn of like the covers on my YouTube channel, where I would just like take songs and a lot of the time just make them creepy, you know?
yeah.
I had a really fun time with that. It's either a creepy version of something or like a first dance version of something. And like, I was vlogging way back in like 2013 and stuff, It's just, I've always liked that. And then whenever TikTok came about, I think it was on in about 2018, 2019,
Yeah,
and I
something like
started
that. Yeah.
in 2019, and lockdown happened. And I remember like in 2019, I was probably trying to like plug singles and songs, and none of it was doing anything. And then lockdown happened, and I started posting the videos that I was just sending to my mates.
Yeah.
And then that's when I went viral on there. Not for music, never for music. Me,
Did you did you Vine?
I did.
You did
That
Vine.
was kind of not really that successful.
Okay.
Um, I think I had about 30,000 or something, but like nothing crazy.
Not
Uh,
everything has to be successful. Sometimes you just for your own amusement. It's just like,
yeah, honestly, like, I like posting. I like watching. I do find, it is one of those things where I know a lot of artists are like, content, rah. And there's some content where I'm like, oh, be for real. It's normally like, hey, Janet, be serious
Yeah.
for the next 45 seconds. And I'm like, no. But if it's like, hey, Janet, go be a lolly and we'll film
Yeah.
it, I'm like, I'm there, So
No, I think that's great because, like, you don't have HR handlers kind of like monitoring you, going, no, 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 you have to say this. No, just be real. And I think people are receptive to sincerity.
it seems to be. It seems I'm probably very overly honest on the internet,
What do
but
you think of the, sorry.
it's all right.
What do you think of the rise of bedroom pop? It's kind of like relating to a lot of what you're talking about, where like a lot of artists have gotten very successful, through kind of like, homemade videos and kind of homemade music they were doing. Again, do you kind of find yourself to be somewhat of a progenitor to that?
Dude, I love it when people make music from their bedroom.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wish I was that talented. I'm not. I write songs in my room, whatever, that's fine. But like, You see people like there's an artist and I cannot remember her name. She's had literally like 10 viral songs on TikTok.
Yeah.
And it's just a girl in her room and she like just doesn't exist beyond the music. She doesn't post anything else. Like she's just a floater. And I think it's dope because like I got lucky, because the music industry's definitely changed in like the 13, 14 years I've been a part of it.
Yeah, totally.
Um, you used to like still in some ways have to like go to a studio when
Yeah.
I was doing it. Like some people had home studios, but they tended to be like already established writers or producers or whatever. Like it wasn't just everybody.
Yeah.
And like now, like if someone's a teenager and they're into music, it's like there you go. Here's some free software. Here's some free this. Here, da 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 da. You go buy yourself a like a cheap microphone. It's still a great microphone by the standards of what you used to be able to buy back in the
Oh,
day.
totally. Totally.
Like if you can actually save up and buy like one of my favorite mics, which is the SM7B, and that's about
Yeah.
£250, and like I've used that on my album.
Yeah, no,
So,
and I think also iPhones themselves have gotten so advanced that like,
oh yeah,
the microphone on an iPhone, not to get too nerdy and technical, but like it has really great it just really hones in your
condensers and
voice
everything.
and yeah, exactly. And it's just like it just sounds perfect. Like, I once heard someone do a podcast just on their iPhone. It's like, what mic do you use? And they're like, I just use my iPhone. Like, oh my
It's
God, I
so
never
yeah.
knew.
But honestly, as well, like and the dawn of the smartphones and CapCut and everything,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I've made basically music videos on CapCut. I shot it on my phone, and I'm one of these weird people now. I'm so anti SLR.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care. It takes too long. I don't care about aperture and ISO, and I
Yeah,
just
I
don't want
hate
to.
that stuff too.
After like 10 years of having to use an SLR and bringing a
Mm.
tripod everywhere and taking nice microphones and this, that, and the other, I'm like, why would I do that?
Yeah,
I have a great device in my hand. Why am I wasting all my time? And I think that's a really exciting time for artists. It's like, you have things like visualizers now instead of music videos. And there's like, literally you can just do it yourself. Will you be
yeah.
exhausted? Absolutely. But you don't have to pay as much as you used to have to pay to hire. For like a week's worth of studio time, you could build your own decent wee home setup.
Yeah.
And I think that's a dope time to be alive.
Actually, one thing I'm going to ask about that though. So one thing I thought was like very appealing as a kid because I used playing bands and stuff. One thing I always thought was very appealing about people just doing like photo shoots with their camera and
Hmm.
people just kind of uploading stuff to YouTube and it looked like it was in like 360p or whatever and it
Yeah.
was really like shoddy, but it was kind of it looked very manageable. You kind of looked at it and you went, okay, I could just do that on like Windows Movie Maker or whatever. That's what people kind of use then. Where now I wonder if like, if everything is like so professional, is like most things are up to a professional standard. There seems to be kind of a baseline of quality that exists now, and that you just don't really see people going below. But I was wondering, do you think that for potential new artists who are coming along, do you think that might make things a little more intimidating?
No, because and I know this from all the market research and stuff. There's two types of content that does well online, and that is yes, well shot SLR or at least 4K footage, whatever. Then you also have the things that do really well is lo-fi. And by lo-fi, essentially doesn't mean like lo-fi beats. It just means like low effort.
Yeah.
Like a girl being there in no makeup and sweatpants and a top, just singing into a crappy little Amazon £10 microphone and singing along to her song. Dope. Those things have gone insanely viral. And then also you have the rise of things like, oh my God, one of the things I love and I'm going to use more is the camcorder.
Mm.
Love it. These things don't have to look great as long as it's got a style, like if there's a style to it at all, because then it's like, oh, you don't have access to the biggest newest brightest iPhone. Cool, what do you have access to? And make it your thing, because then people go, oh, that will become your thing, and then if someone else does it, it's like, oh, you're just trying to be like, you know like I think sometimes, and it's true even now, like for myself, like making music videos and things like this, it's like nothing gets the creative juices going quite like a budget.
Yeah.
A crappy budget is like, oh my God, right, what can I do? And then you have to think. inside a box, but outside the box at the same time. What you can do for no money now is mental. And then there are cheap ways to just make it look a little bit more interesting or sound a little bit more interesting. Again, it's there's no big intimidating 30 grand, 50 grand music videos that much anymore, which
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah,
Get a
no, I think
camcorder on eBay for a tenner.
no, because I think like you do kind of I don't want to put anyone down, but you kind of get the sense when people kind of like proposition you to work with them or whatever, you kind of get the sense of like, well, you're very marketed minded, you kind of have like very conservative approach in terms of like, here's how you kind of do things. I think the more interesting people are the ones who kind of think outside the box, but it's kind of like, I don't know, but then that also becomes a brand too, like trying to think
Yeah.
outside the box. So many like marketing kind of come out and go, we're really innovative and stuff, and then like their proposals are like really standardized kind of stuff you've
Yes.
seen before.
But also the things that all these marketing companies use and social media companies use, they just take ideas from the kids that are doing it originally and organically and then successfully.
Yeah,
Like that's why major labels are not signing just anybody. They're not doing artist development. Why would they do that when they have a 16-year-old on TikTok who's already gone viral, already got loads of listens, and already makes all their stuff, produces their stuff, puts it online, makes little like promo videos naturally to plug their songs? Why would they sign someone without it?
yeah,
And it's sad actually because you get these kids that are really innovative and really good at just doing whatever that means. And then they take them, oh, I'm going to make you a big star, kid.
yeah,
And, give them this big, massive deal. And then they screw it up.
yeah,
And then the artist doesn't own their stuff anymore. And it's really, really sad.
yeah,
But I think also it's the freedom of nature, like the freedom of information on the internet. I think even I was always really like questioning people that would come in and just promise you the world. I'm like, "Mm, really?"
yeah.
And I think most kids these days have that ingrained to be like,
Yeah.
really? Are you
Yeah.
sure?
I
So
think
at
we're all
least
been fed
there's,
with bullshit, so we just kind of know how to sniff it out a
oh,
bit.
so I've got hope for a lot of the young people that like, nobody's going to hand you a career in a silver platter.
Yeah,
But if you want it, I always, there's a phrase that I live by and we use it every day. It's like, well, my managers just think it, do it. And mine's is less thinking, more doing. Like, don't overanalyze how you're going to make something, or oh, I need to make this thing. Oh, I've made this song and I need 60 seconds. Just just do. Don't think,
yeah.
just do. Whatever you have at hand, whatever you can get access to cheaply, just do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one thing I was thinking of, because you mentioned Chaperone there, like she was signed with Atlantic, and they dropped her, and now she's like the biggest singer in the world. I think like again, I think there has to be a sense of honesty that people never really truly know what's going to be the next big thing. People can speculate and they can kind of, but I
Mhm.
don't know. I mean, like I think if you actually look at a lot of artists, like they can be quite arbitrary, like why this one made it and this one didn't, and
Oh
why
yeah.
this one's
Oh, dude.
exploding. And yeah,
It's like it's not even a case of talent, really, right? Because there are so many talented people in this world. It's not a talent game, right? We always say like you have to have everything ready to go as if you're going to pop,
yeah,
and then just pray to God that the stars align.
yeah.
And that's
So
it.
do you think there is like, because obviously now as I was referencing kind of earlier, you've talked about kind of like a lot of your own self growth, and I think that's really reflective in your art too. I mean, like the music you're making has always been very honest and very vulnerable too. Do you find that I don't know, um just kind of like reaching out and kind of being sincerely yourself, as you've always been, has kind of aided you in your career so far? I mean, because like do you think that's what people respond to, is this sincerity, or what's your feeling on that?
So I remember being 16 and being on the show,
Yeah,
and I remember thinking to myself, like, Janet, there's literally no point in trying to be anybody else
yeah,
because then you're going to have to live in that lie. For me at the time, it was like for the next like 9 months, you're going to have to be a character.
yeah,
And I even said it to myself. I'm like, you're not a good enough actress, babe, to be somebody
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
And since with all the things that I've been through and all the learning, growing, sobering up, and all this kind of stuff, it's like there's no point either, because like
Yeah.
people can see through facades in
Yeah.
somebody, and like I've shown the ugly, awful parts of the person that I've been in my past with addiction and all this kind of stuff, and I've been super honest about it. And I think in a way that is a blessing to having a reality show upbringing, is that it's like, oh, you want me to be honest? Chill. I'm used to
Yeah.
that. On camera for millions, that's also fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I've kind of used that to just really put all of myself out there. And again, being an internet kid, like I found a lot of like my like solace online. Like I felt like I was getting bullied as a kid, and it was like, oh no, it'll be fine. I'll get home, I'll open up the computer and I'll have a good time. I've always had that. Um, but there's no point. I couldn't be anybody else anyway. And I managed to get all the demons out on the last record, the confessional record, and it talked about all of that heavy stuff. And then
Yeah.
the fact of that coming out and just being what it was meant that this album, it is the truest version of me, because like I am very silly. I am very jokey and goofy. And there are quite a few just like not serious, silly songs on
Yeah.
this
Yeah. Of
record.
course.
And it feels great, because it means then I'm showing not just the darkness, because I think people are very familiar with the darkness and the ballads
Sure.
and the heavy and the dark. And they love that. But also what's been nice is being able to show that other side, which is the fun loving side, and the side
Yeah.
that I wouldn't have been able to write these songs for this album had I not like dug it all up for that confessional record. And
Yeah.
it's a really nice place to be now, I think, just from sticking it out and not changing,
Yeah.
because I don't think it would work either. Like, uh, like I could put a whole facade on and dress myself up like in a way that's not very me, and put out music that's not very me. But I also just don't think that would do very well anyway. So there's no point.
Well, do you think actually, maybe I'm reaching here a little bit, but do you think there's any element of that being, as you mentioned, the upbringing in Ireland? Because, like, I think there's definitely, if people
Mm.
have pretentious about themselves here, people kind of
Oh, you can't
got
have
it.
notions.
Exactly. Can't have notions.
You cannot be perceived as somebody who's got notions.
So do you ever feel like, oh no, I can't do that because that'd be too bombastic or too,
Oh no,
too
I don't hold myself back because of the way of going at home.
sure.
Right. I'll fight against that to the day I die. Like even doing the BBC documentary about alcoholism, like that would be something if I was, back home and living at home and stuff, that people would be like, God, just wish. Like nobody needs to know all of that. Like
Yeah.
don't be, why are you oversharing and this, that, and the other? And it's like, I think that again is the good thing about getting into this so young, But also, what's great about coming from where I come from is that Jesus, you can't have an ego.
Hmm.
Like that'd get knocked down real quick. Like I remember at like the peak of fame, essentially on the show, I came home, and I came home for like a week. I remember, or no, 2 days, and I was allowed to turn on the Christmas lights, but that meant I got to stay at my parents' house.
Yeah.
And my brother was there, and he was like my best friend. And like I get home, and he goes, "Can you make me some noodles?" And I was like, "I sure." So I was just making noodles, and it was like that summed up was like, nah, you can't be taking notions, because like you just go home and it's like, here, do the dishes, or here, make this, or go do this. No time for it. And I think that's, I mean, you see it definitely with like Who's Here, don't you? It's like
Yeah, yeah.
that's a man without, he could have the world's largest ego, but like he definitely doesn't show it, you
Yeah.
know.
Do you actually think that's kind of similar in kind of attitude to, I guess, like, because I've spoken with artists from like Nashville who do similar musical genre, and they seem to have a very similar kind of attitude too, where it's kind of like even though they're, a success, it seems like kind of antithetical almost to, I guess, what we would perceive as kind of like, and this is stereotypical, I'll admit out of hand, but like, the kind of American idea of, being the next big thing. There seems to be
Mhm.
kind of a humility there. Do you think that's, and again, it could be reaching, but do you think that's a potential connection, musically too, that there is with country music, there is like a humility to it. There is an acknowledgement of one
Yeah.
just being a human like everyone else.
Do you know what I think it is? Because I feel like you're chatting about like musical towns like Nashville.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it is Nashville.
the thing about Nashville and the thing about back home is that everybody's talented. You're
Yes.
not the best singer in the bar.
Yeah.
You're not the best player in the bar. You're not the best guitarist in the town.
Yeah.
There's always somebody there who's just as good and who might be nicer.
Yeah.
There's no room for ego. And I love that about Nashville, that it was just like, sure, if he's not free, then such and such is free. There's so much of it that, and the industries as well are so small that it's like small time mentality, but in a
Yeah.
job, in at work. It's like if you're an awful person, like nobody's gonna work with you
Yeah.
because they don't have to. And at home, it's just like, yeah, like everybody's musical, so it's like you can't get an ego anyway because sure, your woman 5 doors down is a better singer than you are,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she works in
No,
the flower
absolutely.
shop. You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't matter.
No, but I love that too because I think it also creates an attitude that's not cutthroat, where it is born out of like genuine support because someone is a sound bloke or someone is a sound girl. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's kind of just like, your sound, I'll help you out.
It definitely is. And like what I liked about the Nashville guys, especially the ones I worked with, was they were just the nicest people. They were
Yeah.
just, and I'm sat there looking at their discography going like, they are like all my favorite albums, bro.
Yeah.
And they're just so chill about it. There's no bigging themselves up or nothing like that. And it was so nice because I think when I started this album, you always have the big conversation with your teams, like, what do you want from this
Yeah.
record? And I'm like, I want to have fun.
Yeah.
And you know what? Going out there was one of the best decisions I made because those lads, they brought the fun, they brought it into the music and they brought it into the studio and it was just great. And like I definitely, as an Irish person, I get intimidated by people that, um do act like they know everything and they've got everything under control. And then
Yeah.
sure you then go inward and you're like, well, what do I know? They've
Yeah.
got 6 Grammys and this, that, and the other and whatever. But the attitude in Nashville isn't like that.
Yeah.
And I think
No,
that's dope.
I think it's very healthy.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like it's kind of like the opposite of LA.
I can imagine. I haven't been myself, so I'll reserve judgment.
But
But
I will
yeah, I
say, if
believe.
anyone is listening from LA, there are pockets of absolutely amazing, beautiful, humble, kind, sweetest people in the world. I'm just
Yeah,
saying about the ones that go there expecting big, the ones that go there with notions.
sure. With
There we
notions, yeah.
go.
Actually, speaking of, you're living in London now, if I'm correct. I mean, that's a city with, at least in the European context, that's, kind of draws a lot of people who kind of want to make it in varying industries. Have you found kind of like the London music scene compared to back home, or really kind of anywhere else you've lived?
Couldn't tell you. Don't leave the house.
Okay.
No.
That's fair.
Um, it's honest. I hate saying it that bluntly, but it is true. Like I always get asked about the music industry, this, and I'm
Sure.
like, I'm not really in it, man. Like I've been in it so long that I have my guys that I use and I work with, and obviously I work with new people all the time. But I normally have other people that go, "Oh, you'll like this person. They're lovely for X, Y,
Yeah.
and Z reasons," and I'm like, "Sweet, I'll work with them. That's grand." Like you, maybe once a year, I'll go to an industry thing. And you know what? I spend my time with the newbies, the
Yeah.
like 17-year-olds fresh out of uni or
Yeah.
like, whatever, and just be chatting to them. And just you'll probably just find me giving them a pep talk, being like, you don't need nobody. You got this. You know what's cool. They don't know what's cool. They just want to sign you, take your money, and like drop you. It's fine, whatever. And like with actual like industry style people, I'm just a bit like,
Yeah.
I'm too neurodivergent to be trying. And
Yeah.
I don't like to go in and have to try and sell myself or anything like that. I'm just like, I suppose at the party, I'd be the last person you'd think that does music. probably think I'm the accountant or something, you know.
And you're just like kind of like, come on, you like form a little rebellion against the industry. I like that, like from the inside in, just
I'm just
being.
reminding them that, like, you have options. Don't let any person with a big checkbook tell you don't have options, you
Do you
know.
think now there's actually more of a celebration of individuality in the music industry? I mean, like, a lot of it's probably cynical. It's probably just, it's drawn out capital, just like who's going to sell records and things like that. I'm not saying it's done for noble reasons, I say, but just in general, I think like a lot of the kind of major pop artists that are around now, like all of them have very idiosyncratic music, and their personalities really shine through, and they're able to discuss whatever, like their background or their views on
Mm.
society and the world or whatever. Like it seems like there's a lot more uh um there's a lot less limitations on how they can express themselves, and they have a bit more dictation, it seems, from the outward looking in, of course.
Mm.
I wonder if a lot of that's just based on major industries power waning. I mean, I notice a lot of artists now don't give up their catalog, as we were kind of alluding to earlier. They
Mhm.
kind of license it for a period of time, and then it reverts back to them. Do you see this as a positive change?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's always changing every
Yeah,
day. The
yeah,
landscape changes every single day, but like the way most people are getting signed now is that they've created their own buzz and created their own image and created their own music and created their own sound, done their own photographs, done everything, and then they
yeah,
get signed. So it rewards the individual
yeah,
in a lot of ways. Obviously, there are still people being signed before they're discovered and stuff like that, but it is nice to see people getting signed through their own volition, and they've already created themselves as an
hmm
image and as an artist and all the things that people at companies get paid a lot of money to do. Like, let's talk brand identity. It's like Jakers. But also the plus side is you could have somebody in a pair of Wranglers and a white top.
Mm,
But people love them because, like, nowadays there's so much content to find of your
yeah,
favorite artist. Like, even if they don't make it themselves, they're doing podcasts, they're doing interviews, they're doing, all of this stuff that you can digest. And I think it gives a more 360 kind of view.
yeah,
Whereas back in the day, you would have only got an interview on a radio station, and once it went out and it was gone.
yeah,
Or you did a TV appearance, and sure, that was like a highly curated version of somebody to
yeah,
get in 60 seconds or whatever. So I feel like the mystery's gone, but I quite like that. I
yeah,
guess. I don't know. There's definitely a handful of artists that I don't want to know nothing about.
yeah,
I've listened to their music and I'm like, I don't want to know what you look like. I don't know. I don't want to know your relationship status. I don't want to know nothing. To me, I
yeah,
like the big question mark. But then there's some where it's like, I want to know, like, from your music, you seem like somebody you could enjoy a pint way. Like, I want to know, and you look them up, and you're like, sound, and I think that's great, and
And also, you can
I,
elect to have that, your level of involvement with that artist, and it's sort of dictated by you, because you can kind of, if you want someone to kind of remain a mystery, they can be, if you just
yeah,
don't have to engage with the press or
there's
whatever.
ways to do it. I know I'm not going to say their name, but I know an artist who does play a character. It's
Yeah,
full caricature, and they rebirth themselves every album, and they're
yeah,
doing amazing for themselves. But they come across as like an absolute wind-up merchant and a big online troll and whatever.
yeah,
They're the sweetest person. They're
yeah,
just lovely, and they're like, well, I'm pretty boring, so I had to create something that was interesting.
yeah.
And
There's
there's a
also,
plus side to that, because then the people don't, if someone says, I don't like such and such, they're like, that's cool. That's not a person.
yeah. No, it's a good defense, because if someone's critical, it's like, well, you're kind of critiquing a caricature. You're not critiquing me personally. It's
That's why when I speak to young artists, I say, absolutely, under no circumstances ever do you use your real name ever.
mm,
Like, you don't have to go out and go Lady Gaga,
yeah,
but don't use your real name, because that real name should be reserved for your mum or your dad, your loved ones, your best friends, whatever, to say your name and it be you.
yeah,
Create a stage name. It could literally be Becky, whatever. It doesn't have to be a fancy name or nothing. But then that means when it comes to making creative decisions, you don't look at the creative decision as, is this something I would do? It's
Yeah.
like, no, no, is it something this character would say? Is it some, and then when people give you hate, it's the character. It's like it's a curated version that you've made,
Yeah.
and it takes out that personal element. And I think that's really important.
No, it's a really good point. It's the kind of Bowie thing, I guess, of just like,
Hmm.
constantly reinventing yourself. That's a really good advice. I was going to ask actually about, do you care what people say online or anything like that? Do you even pay attention to it? I mean, or do you just kind of go, I'm just doing my thing? But, obviously, I mean, as someone
Yeah.
who has social media, I assume managing your own accounts,
Yes.
comments just pop up, so
So I've been doing it since I was 16. I've
yeah,
been getting online hate since I was like 13 years old. Um, now I'm either laughing at it because trust me, like I used to hate myself beyond comprehension, right? I
yeah,
know what insults work on me. So when
mhm,
somebody comes in and goes, "Oh, you're fat," I'm like, "Cool, try again later, okay?" Or like,
sure,
"Oh, your eyebrows are awful," or "Your voice is off." I'm like, "Shut up! You don't know the right insults." So if someone says an insult that's genuinely a good insult, I will
yeah.
most likely comment back and go, "Nice," because I'm genuinely impressed. I am.
Don't encourage them.
I shouldn't encourage it, but then also, whenever I do get a comment that's a bit, oh,
Yeah,
I'm also reminded and it's true. Took me years to get this level of rewiring now, but I'll see it and I'm like, I hope you're all right. Like just on the
yeah,
inside, I'm like, I hope that person's okay because like a happy person is not leaving visceral hate comments under somebody's little video of them with something that they made or just them being silly. Happy people don't do that. You have to be deeply suffering on a level of which I can't comprehend to do that. So, you know, as awful as the comment is, it's like you're holding this person in your hand, going, "Oh my god,
yeah,
I'm glad I'm not you, and I wish
yeah,
the best for you, but like I've got to move on now to the next thing," you know. So I think whenever you possess that rewiring of like, oh,
yeah.
it's actually a very easy place to be.
How
Like,
much of that do you think is based on kind of like that level of empathy you have and kind of understanding? Because I've done things similar. I've gone to therapy. I've stopped drinking, things like that.
mm,
And I do find your perception of others do kind of change along with your own perception of yourself. I mean, you kind of view people. I think for me, like I think like I've kind of been able to see people less as like good and evil and just shades of gray, really, because I think
mm-hmm,
everyone's capable of terrible things when you really sit down and kind of reflect on things. And sometimes people can be having a shit day and take it out on you, and it's like
mm-hmm.
it's not really my problem. So, do you think like uh, a lot of this perspective you have is just based on your familiarity with the internet? It's based on just the maturity that comes with living, or do you think it's based on your own efforts to self-improve?
It's tough. I think it's been a case of everything, really. I think because I've been on this self improvement journey for like 10 years. And I find that the more you learn about yourself and more about the pattern recognition of things, and, you know, even just in my everyday life, there's little lies I tell myself to make myself feel better. Like someone cuts me up in traffic, I'm like, Jesus, well, their wife could be giving birth right now, and I hope they get to where they need to be safely. Or it's a case of like somebody honking at you or something like that, and you're like, oh, you must have had a really bad day.
Yeah,
That sucks. It's that, but also like little things like, analyzing the people that have hurt me in my life and gone, well, where did their hurt come from? And where is that coming back as like a coping mechanism and a learned behavior from pain and whatever is, especially when I talk to friends, that about their parents and stuff. And it's like, well, you know, they did the best they could with the tools they had at the time. And if you look
sure.
at their parents, I'm sure they're doing a 10 times better job than what their parents did. So it's
Yeah,
not perfect, but it's better.
yeah,
And I feel like most people, I'd say 99% of people are just trying to make it day to day and just, they don't want to be bad. Nobody wants to be a bad person. But I think that obviously the internet brings out anonymity that is unprecedented and whatever.
sure.
Um, but most people are just trying their best. And we're all on different parts of the journey as far as how we treat others, you know,
Yeah,
because some people don't hurt and like don't hurt them. I was always a hurt myself person, but some people don't. And then they accidentally end up hurting others. And
yeah.
you just got to hope and pray that they one day take a step back and want to start their own journey. of getting better.
Yeah.
But until then, like even if somebody's yelling at me or whatever, I'm like, this isn't about me. It's
Yeah.
about the 10 people that have been mean to you today.
Right.
And
It, it
it's a great place to be, you know. Some of
no,
it may be
absolutely.
absolute delusion, but
Yeah.
I'm happy. So
Perfect. And then even like sometimes you get like the shielded comments where it's like, "Hey, I like you, but you know this thing." It's like I don't know. You just gotta let
mhm.
people live their lives, you know. If as long as they're not hurting people, I guess.
Honestly, as well, it's like it's this understanding of you're not supposed to get on with everybody.
Yeah.
Like in primordial brain kind of ways, like you're not supposed to get on with everybody. You're not supposed to like everybody. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that was a hard one for me to swallow back in like my people pleasing era where it was like, oh, I did all these things and they still don't like me. And it's like, cool,
Yeah.
go find someone that does. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
You know, and there's actually a bit of a journey with that on the record as well, like of the relationship style things. Cause I got out of a 3.5 year relationship and like there's a song called Best in You, and it's about this toxic relationship where the it's the opposite of the single red flag,
Yeah.
right? It's me sitting there going like this relationship is awful, but my character defect is that the worst part of me sees the best in you and hoping that things will change and all this kind of stuff. And it's like almost like that empathy to a detriment.
Yeah.
And there's like all of these learning journeys that are kind of going alongside. And then jokingly, I made The Problem Is Me, the last song in the album.
Yeah.
Because there's quite a few songs of me being like, you're awful, you're the problem, da, 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 you're the C word, you know? And then you just get this last song and it's a ballad and it's like, maybe I've been ruining my life.
It's a hard
Mm.
pill to swallow, but you gotta ask the question.
Yeah. I just thought it'd be a funny joke to be like, oh, maybe I'm the problem.
Maybe it's me.
Yeah. So like all of these life lessons, like everything you learn, even if it's awful to learn at the time, like for me, always having music, at least I'm like, I can channel that back in. Like
Yeah.
anytime I went through a breakup in the past, it was like, I'll get a song out of that. You know, it might suck, but it might not.
Yeah. And actually,
So
speaking of, sorry,
mhm.
go ahead.
No, it's all fine.
I was gonna say, speaking of the record, I mean, like, the one that really struck me actually was you brought up there, but when the singles, Red Flag. I mean, I was kind of wondering. I don't know. Again, could be me reading too much into it, but I sometimes wonder, like, for someone like yourself who didn't necessarily acclimatize to exposure, was kind of like, one day just kind of like millions of people know who you are.
Mhm.
Was that in any way kind of reflected in the song, or is that just me reading into it? Because I kind of see it as like um, I don't know, just kind of like reflecting on perception of you in a grander scale rather than just in
Well,
a
I'd say you're
relationship.
half right. You're half right. People think my issue started after the show, and during the show, I was already kind of
Sure.
cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like I had mental health issues that I didn't actually know the diagnosis for. And I didn't
Yeah.
know the diagnosis for till about 3 years ago. I didn't know I had bipolar type 2. I didn't know I had borderline personality, and I didn't know I had ADHD.
Yeah.
All of which mess with your moods like a mother trucker. And I was a troubled teen. Like, from being picked, like I don't even think it was from being picked on or anything like that. I just always just didn't possess the ability to like myself pretty
Hmm.
much. And I think that's why I did love music as well. Not only just naturally loving music, it felt like to me beyond horse riding, it was the only thing that people were like, "You're really good at this thing,"
Yeah.
and it was like, "Oh, maybe I'm good at something."
Yeah.
But the show was what it was. But it's I was troubled, and I always kind of had been. And then you know what? The opposite and contrary to what people believe, the show was really good for me, because it allowed me to see that I could have a job in music, that I could sing, which was my reason for going on the show, was just to find out if I could sing.
Yeah.
And it gave me a goal to work towards in my darkest times, because my darkest times had started before, and then they kind of came in halfway through the show again, just the old mental illness stuff. And it was like, well, I had something to work towards, I had a show to work towards for every Saturday and Sunday, and kept me going, and then gave me the ability to go pursue music and, kind of carry this audience with me. And, I did a gig the other night, and there's people there that have literally known me since I was 16 and followed me since I was 16. And I've seen them at gigs since I was like 16, 17. It's mental. So it's the most rewarding, it's crazy for someone with so many mental illness stuff. It's crazy for me to be able to somehow use that to, just use it for my job and have it be almost something that I've made work and made work well.
Yeah. No, and actually, that's an interesting thing too, because like sometimes when you have kind of like mental health problems, it's kind of like you kind of think like well, if I fix these, like will I lose personality traits that I
I
think are actually
hate
positive?
I hate this notion of you can't make art from happiness. And like I used to fully believe that, yeah, you couldn't be a happy artist. Like, oh my God, then your art's gonna be shallow and
Well, I don't
awful.
even mean that. I just mean in general. Like, will I lose like certain like dark humor? I think an
Oh, the
interesting one of those too,
pizzazz,
where it's
the
like, yeah, just like
spark.
yeah, will I lose like little
Do you know
elements of
what?
myself?
One of the best trends that ever happened on TikTok was, I don't want to take antidepressants, then I'll lose my sparkle. And then
Yeah.
it's just this ominous music that plays in the background, and people would go, the sparkle in question. And it would be like all of the downsides of having mental illness. And
Yeah,
I'm
that's a good
like,
point.
that's a great trend
Yeah.
because, you see people that have that aesthetic of like dark and emotional and just raw feelings and stuff like that. And that is the thing. But
Yeah.
you don't have to be like that if you're not like that. You don't have to go make yourself sad for no reason. Like
Yeah.
the saddest songs, I think at the minute, like some of my saddest work is on this album. And
Mm.
I was a happy mother trucker, but because I'm happy on most days, it doesn't mean that the dark parts aren't there. It just means I
Right.
now have the tools to make it through those days. And I also possess a level of awareness that I didn't have back in the day. So I can actually write more in-depth emotive work because I can actually see all of the cogs that are going on in my life at that time. So
Yeah.
you actually have a much more wide lens view instead of maybe just writing a song that's like, my boyfriend's awful, and here's a song about my awful boyfriend, and I'm a victim, or any of that, So I think that mental wellness should always be the goal, no matter what.
Yeah. And sometimes something I've thought about too is sometimes I think we sometimes weirdly romanticize images of people suffering. There is
Mm.
sometimes people kind of romanticize, I think, the idea of like I don't know, a loner or something like that, kind of
The
like
tortured
depressed or something.
artist.
Exactly. And I kind of feel like that's not healthy too. I mean, to make
Mm.
these kind of aesthetics sexy or whatever, you know?
No, definitely not. It's but like the thing is, you can have the aesthetic without having the illness.
Yeah. But
You
then
you go live your mysterious, aloof artist life and be dark and mysterious, whatever. You can do that, but also be
yeah.
in therapy.
Yeah. Right, therapy.
You know?
If you could, yeah, yeah. If you can get it, go to therapy.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah,
Or, take an hour a day to reflect.
yeah. Just one last thing I want to ask about the album before I let you go is just one thing I found very interesting when I was listening to it is that it seems like a very self-reflective record in the sense that it's kind of very aware that it's a country record, obviously, but you kind of like allude to yeah, okay, I'm gonna kind of tongue in cheek, I'm gonna use this country trope and things like this. I don't know, I was wondering like did that just feel right to you to kind of like go, okay, I'm going to draw awareness to the fact this is a country record, or was it just kind of like something that was conscious that you're like, how conscious was it, and how much of it was just kind of like this just what feels right? I'm not like gonna overthink it.
I didn't overthink it altogether that much. But the thing that I did think about was because all the things I've gone viral for on the internet have all been just thoughts, just
Yeah,
my interpretations of things, and just putting a fun little spin on it. And one of my favorite things about country music when I was a kid was like, yeah, you have the dark stories and yeah, it's all whatever. One, I'm already an alcoholic, so I qualify, but beyond that, the one of my favorite things was like the clever quip. At
yeah,
the end of a course or something, there's like a line that's like a twist, and it's funny as hell. I loved that. And I don't see it in any other genre really beyond country, where it's like you can write a joke song. If it was in any other genre, it would be a joke song, but
Mhm.
it's not in country because the music is still done professionally and well, and it's just like clever little funny lyrics and stuff. And like I'm a word nerd and I love it. And I remember sitting and I was writing at the very start of this album. I was like, why don't I start writing things that I'd maybe turn into a TikTok video? Why don't I just use my wee TikTok brain, which
Mhm.
is just a silly goose, and just turn that into songs?
Yeah.
And that birthed obviously things like Daddy and the country singer and emotional rodeo being like, hey, I've got borderline personality disorder and here's a fun little song about it. All of that kind of stuff. And it's proved to work really well, you
Yeah.
know. Even Red Flag is one of the ones where it's just like a sweet little laid back song and the joke is just the only red flag I see is that you're into me kind of
Yeah.
thing. That's been, I think, the biggest difference I would say in how I've approached
Yeah.
like the writing, because the ballads and stuff, oh geez, that's easy. I love that stuff. I love writing
Well,
sad songs.
the interesting thing about that line, the only red flag is that you're into me, is that it seems kind of like I don't know, very dour, but like, I think that's something people who only have a level of self-assurance could actually say about themselves in a weird way.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. It was because I dated so many people that were just walking red flags.
Yeah.
And you know what? For a long time, so was I.
Hmm.
And the song actually it's not literal.
Yeah.
It's a manifestation of a perfect partner. I'll let you know how that goes. Still putting it out there, so I basically just built a bear my perfect partner and was like, yes, the only flaw this man will have is that he likes me, even if I have weird episodes of being awful.
That is true love. We're kind of being flippant here, but I do think true love is kind of 'cause I think that is a good threshold, because I think in a lot of ways, like people who are only into you in a kind of superficial level, as soon as like anything like that kind of comes along, it's like I'm out of here. Where it's like, no, that is true love. Kind of
Yeah,
being
true
there
love
for
is
people
is
throughout.
buckling in for the whole ride.
Yeah,
It's like
totally.
it's it's you actually want to be a part. You have to like someone for everything,
Yeah, yeah. No, I
not
agree.
just the bits that are socially palatable.
Sure, sure.
But I'll let you know if real love exists and if that's possible.
Please
I'll
do.
let
I
you
could
know on
use
the
the
next
encouragement.
album. We'll see how that goes.
Perfect. Is there anything you'd like to add, Janet, or anything you'd like to include before we wrap up, or?
Yeah, one thing.
Mhm.
I'm an independent artist. That means budgets are tight, and we blew most of the budget on making this album. So,
Mhm.
if you go and you listen to it and you think, I really like this thing, I would very much appreciate it if you could buy it. If you have the means to, only if you have the means to, if you have the
Sure.
spare shrapnel to get the album, I'd really appreciate it because every purchase is a big deal because even one song it's the equivalent of 150 streams. That's
Yeah.
150 listens, and that's a hard thing to do. Like, so that's all. And but you know what? I extend that to not just myself, to any of the independent artists that you enjoy, because unfortunately, if we stop purchasing, and I've seen it because I've seen loads of my friends whose music I love, they've left the music industry because they can't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's very
Um,
difficult.
yeah, so it's one of those things where if you've listened to it once or twice on Spotify or something, you're like, I like this, please consider purchasing it. I would appreciate it.
There are also signed copies on their website.
That is true, but I will
I just
say,
had that
so
plug.
if you've got an Amazon account, you can get it unsigned, but it will be free postage. But if you want it signed or any of the fun, funky colors for vinyls and cassettes and all this, that's on my website. All that stuff. But there is an Amazon option.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Janet. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I wish you the best of luck with this record and everything else you have coming up. And
Oh,
support
thank you.
independent artists.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Janet. Take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're an independent venture run by yours truly, and as I said at the beginning, liking, rating, subscribing, and sharing really helps us out a lot. If you're feeling extra generous, we do have a PayPal donation link in the episode description, but don't feel obligated, of course. We've also begun releasing occasional exclusive episodes on Spotify, so subscribe there if you'd be interested in hearing those. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.